The following program is a podcast1.com production.
Your healthy radio addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
No one really knows how the game is played, the art of the trade, how the sausage gets made. We just assume that it happens, but no one else is in the room where it happens.
When they discussed protecting immigrants from Haiti, El Salvador, and African countries, several Post sources briefed on that meeting claim President Trump said this, quote, "Why are we having all these people from S-hole countries come here?" Except he, of course, used the word. Senators Graham and Durbin took the proposal to the White House, where the Washington Post reports they were surprised to find immigration hardliners such as Congressman Bob Goodlatte and Senator Tom Cotton. White House and Capitol Hill aides told the Post that aide Stephen Miller was concerned there could be a deal proposed that was too liberal, so he made sure conservative lawmakers were in the room.
Doorstep one day in distress.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. I have 5 words to say. It took me a while to count. Thank God for Stephen Miller. I mean, this is hilarious. Now imagine this. You got old Lindsay Open Borders Graham. Okay, you have Tricky Dick Durbin. And you have Jeff, I didn't vote for Trump Flake. They make their way in their black sedans over to the White House. And they're like, all right, now, Trump doesn't really know the details of this plan. He we had that great meeting. He said he'd agree to anything we do. So, all right, we're going to increase chain migration because all those 800,000 DACA dreamers, they're going to be able to sponsor as many family members as they want, including their parents every 3 years. Okay, we're going to do that. And then Visa Lottery, we're going to keep that, except we'll cut it in half and then transfer the program over to even the lower immigrants. All right, and then this is all going to be good stuff. Then we're going to say we're going to do border enforcement. We'll throw a few shekels over to the border enforcement. And then we're going to go in there, we're going to have a big hug and say, Mr. President, you're so smart and thank you so much. They walk in. They walk into the meeting. Hi, gentlemen. And it's Tom Cotton. And it's Bob Goodlatte. Bob Goodlatte in the House of Representatives, congressman from Virginia, who has his own bill, that is so much better. I mean, it's not better. It's leagues beyond and closer to what Trump originally said. And Tom Cotton, who obviously with Senator Perdue, is the senator who sponsored the RAISE Act, which should all be implemented. And they walk in and they see these two guys there and Stephen Miller. Hi, gentlemen. Excuse me, but Lindsey Graham had to grab the extra thick Huggies, adult Huggies, because he said, hey, Dick, do you have any plan B? What's the plan B here?
Some people
so Trump sits
don't
back.
want to say to the loud folks, no, you can't have your way all the time.
He sits back. Trump. All right, give it to me. Tell me what you came up to. You doing the working on this for months? What do you have? Yeah, give me. Lay it on me. Well, all right. Well, okay. So we're gonna get rid of Visa Lottery by half. What? What do you mean by half? These people are running people over on the streets of New York. You mean by half? No. We're getting rid of all. Okay. Well, and then with the DACA, they're gonna be able to stay, and then their parents are gonna be able to stay for recycled 3-year periods. Are gonna re-up every 3 years. And then the chain migrate. Well, then they can. The Dreamers can bring in their family members, and the parents can stay as long as they register every 3 years.
For how long?
For what? Well, Mr. President, that would be unless they commit a serious crime. What? Did you not hear what I said? I said chain migration's over. Over. Now, Dick, these don't. When you give me, and then the South. So wait, that'd be. So Trump must have said, wait a second. So the Visa Lottery. 50,000 people for diversity because 53 million people from Hispanic countries in the United States, an increase of 38% since 2000, the year 2000. That's not enough diversity for these people. So we need to keep going diversity. The president says, wait a second. Why are you giving me the Salvador, the Haiti, why we give more of that? He's just meeting with that Norwegian prime minister, probably says, we don't have a lot of Our people don't get a lot of luck coming into your country. Don't you? Wouldn't you like to know what she said about Norwegians who want to come to the United States? Maybe it's on work permits. Maybe she's like, well, we don't seem to get any love from you guys. And it's probably in the president's mind. Now, the controversy swirling. Do you notice how the left, they glom on to the S-hole word, and because they do not want to discuss the substance of what they tried to ram through and cram down the president's throat at that meeting yesterday, which would have increased chain migration, increased low-skilled labor, meaning put more pressure on American jobs, and, of course, would have been a pittance on the border. Would have would have allowed more illegal immigrants to cross the border because 1.6 billion, as I said, does nothing to ensure a permanent border wall. And by the way, it gives the DHS secretary more discretion to halt or slow down the fortification at the border. This all, for my reporting last night, this is what I discovered about this great deal that bipartisan. When I hear bipartisan, that's all I need to hear. When it's Graham in the bipartisan, Graham agrees with the Democrats on all. It's not bipartisan. It's a one-party rule on immigration. The establishment always calls it bipartisan when it's open borders, more low-skilled labor, and a promise of border enforcement that never materializes.
We're in a demographic death spiral.
Yeah, we are, and he wants to make it worse. So, Raymond, then the controversy erupts about this when what Trump reportedly said.
Well, on CNN, they went crazy.
Oh, CNN, MSNBC, they held up big posters saying Trump's an asshole. And they used the word, by the way. Do you have a problem that all these networks use the word?
And had it on screen on the lower
And had
third.
it on screen and had a big poster board like Chris Pretty Boy Cuomo. A big poster that said that this is what Trump is, and it has the word asshole. I mean, imagine if you did that after Joe Biden. Remember all his salty language?
Right. After the health care signing.
Yeah, this is a big blanking deal.
And
if we said Joe Biden is a big blanking deal in a poster board, we never would have been allowed to.
Or put that across the lower third on Fox or another network.
Yeah, so let's see how long they would hold that, allow that to be.
CNN went crazy.
Okay, so what has the president said?
There are a lot of angry voices on television tonight because of this, and with good reason. But I'm not going to be one of those angry voices. Why? Because anger feeds the same instincts that drive what Trump said. I get the anger. Make no mistake. I'm second generation.
Okay, I don't need to hear this,
country.
James. I don't need to hear this. I don't want to hear Chris Cuomo. He bores me to death. And it bores my listeners. That's not the point. He was actually sounding kind of calm
sober
there. That's the last thing we want to hear because he was actually sounding calm. The ones who were out of control were on at 8 o'clock, 10 o'clock, Don Lemon, Wolf Blitzer. They were all going. For some reason, I can't hear James very well. You're really low. So here's what I want to do. I want Raymond to tell us what both Jake Tapper said today in a thread of his reporting on this, what actually was said. Now, let me remind everybody that Durbin and Graham and Flake did not vote for Donald Trump. Why was he even coming to the White House? Talk about letting the fox into the hen house. The fox goes into the hen house. What do you think is going to happen? The chicken gets eaten. The fox goes into the hen house. You have feathers everywhere. What happened? They came out of that White House meeting. They were embarrassed because the president said, "No way, Jose."
Personally rejected their deal is what Dick
I
Durbin
would
said
love
on the
to have
record.
seen him sitting back and then is that all you have? You got to be kidding me.
Can't do it. Not
Can't
gonna
do
work.
it. No. Miller, what do you think? No, that doesn't work. Okay, go back and try again. They come out and they leak something distorting what the president said to make him look like a racist, thinking that the president would get cowed because everyone's and he's going to have to show that he's not a racist by agreeing to their crapola terms. And guess what? The president's smarter than they are, as usual. And by the way, I've actually spent a lot of time in El Salvador, going back to the war, durante la guerra, all the way back to the 1980s, where I spent an enormous amount of time there. I know Guatemala. I've spent an enormous amount of time there. I am actually going to Haiti this year, and not as much as people like Anderson Cooper or Greta, but I'm interested to go there to see the corruption and the rank poverty and all of the problems they have there. It's not the people's fault. It's the government's fault. And that is why people want to flee. If it was paradise, people wouldn't flee these countries. The reason they're fleeing is because the description that was attributed to Trump is correct in large part. It's a sad commentary for the good people in these countries that the government is corrupt. That's what Trump was saying. Everybody knows it except the people who already thought he was a racist. Now, Raymond, before I blow a gasket, tell us what happened.
The president tweeted out a response this morning.
He's got to come on my show tonight.
The language used by me at the DACA meeting was tough, but this was not the language used. What was really tough was the outlandish proposal made, a big setback for DACA. Sadly, Democrats want to stop paying the troops and government workers in order to give a sweetheart deal, not a fair deal, for DACA. Take care of our military and our country first. First. First.
So he's denying it. He said it never happened.
And now Jake Tapper has reported a nuanced version. Well, and he says, it doesn't make it any more acceptable, but perhaps it adds some context to what the president said. So do you have that thread, Raymond?
I do. Jake Tapper is reporting that his sources are saying the president did not refer to Haiti as an asshole country, according to the source familiar with the meeting, though he did say it about countries in Africa. What happened, the source says, is there was a conflation of two different remarks by the president. First, when talking about temporary protected status countries as part of the immigration deal, it was mentioned that Salvadorans, Hondurans, and Haitians would have status. Haitians, the president said, why do we need more Haitians? Take them out, meaning take them out of the deal. Then in a separate part of the conversation, when they were referencing the diversity visa lottery, President Trump referred to people coming from Africa as coming from asshole countries. Again, I'm not saying this is better, just that that's what happened per my source.
Okay,
Tapper
so
writes.
Who disagrees with that statement? When you're talking about a country like, say, South Sudan, where people are lit on fire with flamethrowers, Central African Republic, Somalia, other countries in Northern Africa that have been plagued by Al-Qaeda, the presence of ISA offshoots, by horrible natural disasters, and by rank government corruption, the persecution of Christians, other Muslim minorities, what they do to women, all these great human rights crusaders, what they do to gay people. Now, if it's such a destination spot for you, why don't you try to open up a Club Med in Somalia and see how it works for you? Why don't you schedule your next 2 weeks off in the summer instead of going to Martha's Vineyard? Why don't you go to Djibouti and see how good it is? Okay, why don't you spend time there? I've actually gone to Africa 3 times. But I tend to go to South Africa and Botswana. That's where I go, and Zambia. But you go to certain parts of Africa which are, there's so much natural beauty in Africa. It is heartbreaking what the government has allowed to happen. And that is what the president is speaking about. Yes, Ebola. We had the Ebola outbreak, which came to the United States, was brought to the United States, thank goodness contained, originating in Africa. Thank you very much. And it's a horrible, awful thing for people not to be able to stay in their home countries. But they don't flee. People tend not to leave their homeland unless it's for a special job they got, or unless they're fleeing persecution or no opportunity. So you might think it's salty language, but I would guess that most of these people declaring Trump to be racist today, if they had their druthers, wouldn't be spending a lot of time in these other countries. And I bet you I've spent more time in the countries in Central America than all these people combined. All of them combined. 855-40-LAURA, which is why we need to increase adoption opportunities, which is something I have been arguing for years. for children who can be rescued from these countries, from parents in the United States who want to open loving homes legally to these children. 855-40-LAURA. We're going to take a break. Your reaction to this? Are you offended by what the president reportedly said and now apparently did say, which is not what they originally reported?
Yeah, he's saying the language was not precise. Yeah, and Jake Tapper's reporting would seem to substantiate that.
Yeah, so 855-40-LAURA. Are you offended by what the president actually did say in reference to why are we adding people to the country from these particular S-hole countries? And he's talking about the particular countries in Africa. We have 80,000 Somalis living in Minnesota. We have thousands living in Maine. We have thousands more scattered across Idaho, South Dakota, North Dakota, Nebraska, Oklahoma. The list goes on and on. Eritreans, it goes on and on and on. Is that the type of immigration? Nothing to do with anything except merit-based. Do we need merit-based, or are we just going to say anyone who lives in a bad country can come here? And that's it's your universal right to emigrate here and bring your whole village. And what does that do to America? It is not racist to say you need an immigration policy that works for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, other Americans of different backgrounds. It has to work for the working people of this country. We'll take a break. Your reaction, 855-40-LAURA. Oh, a brand new year has begun. It's so exciting. Lots of changes. And you're beginning to set new goals for your business. It's extremely difficult to reach them, though, without the right people on your team. And ZipRecruiter has transformed how you go about finding them. ZipRecruiter posts your job to over 100 of the web's leading jobs boards with just one click. Then ZipRecruiter actively looks for the most qualified candidates and invites them to apply. They even review every application to identify the top candidates, so you never miss a great match. That's why ZipRecruiter is different. Unlike other hiring sites, ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on the right candidates finding you. It finds them. No wonder 80% of employers who post on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site in just one day. ZipRecruiter is the smartest way to hire. Find out today why ZipRecruiter has been used by businesses of all sizes and industries to find the best and most qualified candidates with immediate results. And right now, my listeners can post jobs on ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to ZipRecruiter.com/Ingram. That's ZipRecruiter.com/Ingram. To try it free, go to ZipRecruiter.com/Ingram.
Talking everlasting words and dedicate them all to me.
The President of the United States is racist. All of us already knew that. Those comments are frankly disgusting.
This is what he thinks of the places and the people that have fed the lifeblood of this country from its inception.
Perhaps the White House feels the president's remarks will be well received in some parts of this country, among some parts of the president's base. And perhaps that is true. But it doesn't make what he said any less ignorant or any less racist.
You are listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. This is all they have. They know the substance of what Durbin and Flake and Graham were offering is a non-starter. They know it as well as we do. Increasing chain migration, increasing low-skilled immigration, and, of course, pittance for the wall. We know all that. Mac in Florida, line 3. Everyone's calling in. Mac, go ahead.
Hey, Laura, I think it is hilarious to watch. I think Trump was elected because he says exactly what people are thinking, and it's hilarious to watch the Democrat outrage machine go into action. Virtually every immigrant that comes from here is coming from some other horrible place in the world. We don't need any more low-skilled workers. They're not bringing anything to our country, and it's our country. We have a right to say who comes in and who doesn't and what you're bringing to the table. And Trump
Bingo. We're out of time. I appreciate it. 855-40-LAURA. We'll get to all your calls. Remember, this is your country. What kind of country do you want it to be for your children and grandchildren? Do not let them cow you with their epithets and their insults. They tried it before. It doesn't work.
But what can I say about something that blows me away? Without it sounding like another cliche. From what I've seen and I've heard, when it comes to you, baby, no, there are no words.
The president interrupted him several times with questions, and in the course of his comments, said things which were hate-filled, vile, and racist. I use those words advisedly. I understand how powerful they are. But I cannot believe that in the history of the White House, in that Oval Office, any president has ever spoken the words that I personally heard our president speak yesterday.
30 years just to find one girl.
Oh, what a fraud. Dick Durbin is the biggest fraud ever. Go back and read, as Breitbart posted yesterday, what Ted Kennedy said about some of these countries. Don't worry, we're not going to be flooding America with people from these countries. You know, these African countries. Ted Kennedy said that. Many other Democrats said it at the time in the mid-1960s. And guess what? He's one of the lions, still remains one of the lions of the U.S. Senate.
Also, I find it hard to believe, given that I've heard the Nixon tapes.
Oh, my God.
Given
Nixon,
that
LBJ.
I mean, the things these men
FDR.
said would make what Trump said the other day, if he said it, pale in comparison.
Big deal. It's what most Americans think. It's not about the people. It's about the governments that force their people to flee because they brutalize them. They steal from them. They're corrupt. And it's preposterous. Before we get to the director of the U.S. Citizenship, USCIS, I'm delighted this next guest is with us. I want to go to Lee in North Carolina because I want Francis Cisna to hear Lee. Lee, go ahead.
Yes, Laura. I am a former USOC Marine, and I defended American embassies in West Africa, French consulates in Central African Republic, and Sudan, and different areas. And I want to tell you, these are the people who commit atrocities against their own people that are unspeakable in their own countries. The former government brought them here, and now they commit them against us. And this is also the former president that said that the most beautiful thing he ever heard was the Muslim call to prayer, not the national anthem. So which statement do you find the most offensive, Laura?
Well, I think that we have to be very clear in saying that President Trump was not referring to people. He was referring to the places that forced their people to flee. If they were paradise, if they were lovely places to live, if they gave their people opportunities, the people would remain. There's no way to make a living in some of these countries. People are desperate. They're desperate, and they do desperate things to get out of the countries that are preventing real opportunities. Joining us now, and I'm delighted he's with us. And Lee Cisna is a director of U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, joins us now. And this situation, as it was described yesterday, Lee, is, in my mind, typical of Washington. The president said he had certain priorities in immigration, and he was willing to give some type of temporary protection or protection for the so-called dreamers. But we needed real enforcement of the border, we needed a wall, and we needed to end chain migration. Your reaction to what's being reported out of that meeting?
So, first, hi, Laura. I guess my reaction is that if the president, as he said, used tough language, I'm not surprised. If I think any person who got the deal that it's reported he got or was offered by these members, I think the reaction was anybody would have a similar reaction. The deal that I understand was proffered does not correspond to the four pillars that are the outlines of these negotiations. The administration has said we want, first, of course, some sort of fix for these DACA people. And by the way, the DACA people is not the same as the Dreamers. It's a different population. It's a smaller population. Border security, ending the diversity visa lottery program, and then ending chain migration. It doesn't look to me like that what he got offered yesterday corresponds to those four goals.
Well, my reporting, which comes from sources inside the White House, confirm exactly what you said. In fact, chain migration would increase under the plan because the 800,000, or whatever the number is, of those DACA individuals would be able to then sponsor family members beyond just the parents who are here illegally they would be able to sponsor the parents for 3-year rolling status, legal status in the United States. They just have to re-up it every 3 years. So that's a problem. And then you would increase it because of chain migration wouldn't be in any way ended from that proposal. Right now, we have a number of countries that have been predominantly represented in our immigration pools, and I was wondering if you could go through those countries, and specifically in Africa, Ethiopia, Ghana, Nigeria, obviously in some in Egypt, but Somalia is actually one of the countries that we've taken more immigrants than any other country in Africa, I believe. But go through some of those countries and what the problems are there.
Well, I don't have in front of me a list of in rank order of all the countries that are the sources of our immigrants, but suffice it to say, I mean, every year we get 1 million immigrants from all over the world. They're from everywhere. Predominantly, we get immigrants from China and Mexico, the Philippines, but you're right, we get a lot of immigrants from everywhere else too. And a lot of these countries, for some of them, the main way to get an immigrant visa is actually the visa lottery program. The visa lottery program is one of the 4 pillars of these negotiations. We want to get rid of it. It's horrendous. It is a program that it's based literally on a lottery, and if you can show that you have a high school degree, that's it. Or if you can show that you have a job that required at least 2 years of experience, that's it. And if you're picked by the lottery, you come in. A lot of these countries, people sign up for that lottery in droves. There's rampant fraud. State Department has found that years and years ago. GAO also. They can come in. And that sort of thing has no place in our immigration policy. There's absolutely no selectivity being exercised by the government in who's getting in that way.
Lee, last night on my show, sorry to interrupt. Last night on my show, one of our guests said to me, "Oh, well, you're wrong." Maybe it was 2 nights ago. You're wrong. They have to go through stringent background checks to be a member of the visa lottery. And don't we love diversity? And diversity is our strongest core value, which I howled about because we already have 58 million people of Hispanic origin in the United States from 17 different countries. But they were arguing that there's strict checks.
Well, that's fine. I mean, everybody who's an immigrant has to go through strict checks. But the question is, do we want the program that they come in through to be absolutely void of any selectivity? And that's why we also don't like chain migration. And mind you, chain migration doesn't mean that we're opposed to people bringing their spouse and kids over. That's fine.
Minor kids.
Yeah, exactly. Minor children. And that's fine. Their spouse and kids. But chain migration is when you take it to the next level and the next level. And basically the immigrants are selecting themselves. It'd be like, Harvard University setting up these strict criteria to let people in, and then afterwards having the members of each class pick the next class. You set up the criteria for the first class, and then everyone else picks themselves. It's not a way to run an immigration policy. There's no selectivity. That's why we don't like the visa lottery program. That's why we don't like chain migration. Selectivity just evaporates after the first level, and you have no control over who's coming in.
The data, and I'm going to get to what Dick Durbin just said moments ago on chain migration, which will shock you. But just so people understand, and the numbers are going to be coming in for the period of 2010 to 2018, 2017, I imagine at some point soon. But the number of people who've come from African countries from the period of 2000 to 2010, a total of 940,000 individuals, almost 1 million, overwhelmingly from Nigeria, 162, all the way up to 264,000 from Nigeria, Egyptian, almost 200,000, Ethiopian, 202,000, Ghanaians, 91,000, South Africans, 57,000, Moroccans, 82,000. Somalia, we started in 2000 with 36,000 Somalians, and by the year 2010, 120,000 Somalians. Many of them came, of course, on chain migration. So that's quadrupling the number of Somalians in the United States from 2000 to the year 2010. Imagine what it is today. It goes on. The list goes on. But the biggest jumps, you see Sudanese, 14,400 brought into the United States in the year 2000, admitted into the United States. By the year 2010, the Sudanese number jumped from 14,000 to 42,000. 4 times the number admitted in the year 2000. Now, what does that tell you?
Oh, it doesn't surprise me at all. If these numbers are right, I mean, they don't sound at all surprising.
They're from the American Community Survey from the U.S. Census.
Well, and the reason why this is happening, and there was an excellent Princeton study that came out, I think, in 2012, 2013, where they actually took cadres of immigrants and tried to calculate using census data and other data how many people they were actually sponsoring. And they found that on average, your typical immigrant will sponsor 3.4 additional immigrants going into the future. But if you look at specific nationalities, they also broke it down by that. Different nationalities have much, much higher rates of onward sponsoring. So I think Mexican nationals sponsored on average something like over 6 additional new immigrants. So I could easily see how for some of these other countries you would have much higher rates of onward sponsorship than just 3. I mean, it could be 4, 5, 6, even higher. So yeah, these numbers you're citing are not at all surprising, and that's the problem. The immigrants are picking themselves. Any semblance of selectivity has evaporated after the first level, and that's not desirable, I think, for our national immigration policy.
Yeah, and now it's estimated that there are 2.1 million immigrants of African origin in the United States, primarily, again, Nigeria, Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, South Africa, Somalia, Eritrea, and Kenya. And they come here because of scant economic opportunities, subjugation, repression, oppression, and a variety of other related concerns. And again, this is from the right-wing source known as the Wikipedia analysis of the U.S. Census. So let's play for you what Dick Durbin said just moments ago, Democrat senator who was in that room with President Trump yesterday offering him a deal he knew he could not accept. Let's listen.
When it came to the issue of, quote, chain migration, I said to the president, do you realize how painful that term is to so many people? African Americans believe that they migrated to America in chains. And when you speak about chain migration, it hurts them personally. And he said, oh, that's a good line. And then when I talked to him about the impact this has on family unification in a nation that values families with the flag as the most important symbols of our future, they scoffed at this notion.
Okay, so chain migration. All right, we've heard enough of that. Chain migration for Dick Durbin is all about subjugation. To use that language, it's about subjugation in chains, even though, of course, the most chain migration has happened from Mexico.
I mean, it's not a pejorative term. That's a term that's been used in the immigration world for years and years and years. But you know, we should be wary. We shouldn't allow people opposed to the administration's positions to conflate chain migration with family migration. It's a different concept, and the administration is not against people bringing over their spouses and kids. That's their minor kids. We have no problem with that. It's the onward, endless chain of sponsorship that gets us to the position where we are now, where there's no selectivity left in the process.
And tell us, if you would, again, we're talking to the Director of United States Citizenship and Immigration Services. Do you go by Lee or Francis, by the way? I see it both ways.
Francis, actually.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so because it's
right.
Francis Lee, is that right? Or okay. I see it both ways. And I should probably call you Mr., but I feel like I already know you. So tell us what's happening. I know at the border right now we've seen an increase in attempted crossings, and many people believe this is the result of deteriorating economic conditions, low wages in places like Guatemala and Salvador, Mexico, but also because they are anticipating an amnesty that they could perhaps take part in. What is your sense on that?
Well, absolutely. I've been around in this business for a while, and every time Congress starts talking about some big legalization like this, the numbers go up because everybody knows they got to get in quick because there might be a cutoff as part of the deal, and they want to make sure they're in before the cutoff. You also have fraudsters who want to get into the country because if the criteria that are in the bill are really weak, they know that they can just sneak in, and then when the program is announced or implemented, they can take advantage of the weak criteria to get in. That's what happened back in 1986. The criteria were so weak that we had millions of fraudsters take part in that. I would also say that one of the other incentives that is drawing people to the border is that they know, and this is one of the other things that when we talk about border security for these negotiations, we have to be able to remove people who are here. If we don't have that ability, then it serves as a further incentive for people to come and swarm the border. And one of the big things we're looking at is our inability to remove these unaccompanied children, these family units that are showing up the border.
They all have to go back. They all have to go back immediately. Francis, I'm going to try to get you on TV tonight. We'll work on that with your team. Thank you so much. I'm sorry to have to cut you off. We'll take a break. Head of Immigration and Customs Services, fantastic interview. Don't go away. All right, huge Ingraham angle tonight. You do not want to miss it. We expose what the Democrats are doing. What are they doing? They're using the cudgel of race again because they cannot argue the substance. They want to flood this country with people who will drive down wages and create new banks of Democrat voters. That's all it's about. They don't give a rat's you-know-what about the so-called dreamers.
Hi, this is Ben Domenech, the host of the Federalist Radio Hour. We're a daily show coming to you 5 days a week from Washington, D.C., where we interview our nation's top journalists, politicians, authors, chefs, economists, entertainers, and more. If you're looking for a contrarian discussion on news, politics, or culture, give us a listen and subscribe at podcastone.com, the new Podcast One app, or at Apple Podcasts.
Your Healthy Radio Addiction starts now.
Power to the people!
The Laura Ingraham Show.
Yeah, I pound fear into a pile of sand, choke lonely out with my bare hands, and I'd hang hate so that it can't be heard. If I could only kill a word.
Donald Trump has shown us his dark heart, has shown us his racism.
This is not someone who doesn't know better.
Right.
This is someone who's chosen a path that is absolutely racism with steroids.
We now know that we have in the White House someone who could lead the Ku Klux Klan in the United States of America. Somebody who could be the leader of the neo-Nazi and publish just his words.
Is he now from Barcelona saying neo-Nazi? Is he now from Barcelona? Luis Gutierrez? He's the neo-Nazi. What? I don't even understand it. You're listening to the Laura Ingraham Show, 855-40-LAURA. This is all they have. I've been saying this for years. They have identity politics. They have abortion, and they have LGBTQRST. That's all they have. Identity politics, abortion, and race baiting. This is what the Democrats have. They're not serious. And I'll be getting into this in depth tonight on the Ingraham Angle. If you're out and about tonight on a Friday night, good for you. But some of us have to work to save the country, and that's what we're going to be doing. And if you want to join us in saving the country, I need you to hit me on the DVR, record the series, and keep us out there and in your minds and in your homes, because we're going to tell you exactly what has happened with immigration into the United States, how it's gone from a merit-based system in an age where we needed lots of factory workers, post-industrial age, post-World War II, ginning up, those factories were humming, to a period of time where it was based in diversity concerns and family chain migration concerns. That's where it changed, and that's why since 1965, we've brought in people from countries that traditionally didn't really have a big affinity for the United States or for our culture or understanding. Some of them have gone on to do exceptionally well. But we have had problems with keeping wages low in the country, and we've had problems with assimilation into the American understanding, and that has to stop and that has to end. Immigration exists for the benefit of the American people and our understanding of how we can expand our workplaces and our job opportunities with special skills and in immediate family members, meaning spouses and minor children. They are always allowed into the United States if you apply legally and get in. What chain migration is when the second cousin twice removed and auntie and uncle and great-grandma, grandpa, and adult children and their families. When adult children and their families get to come in, that's a different deal. Okay, so that's where we are here. Now, the Democrats know, in my mind, that Donald Trump, and when I say Democrats, I mean Lindsey Graham and Jeff Flake, in addition to Tricky Dick Durbin and the others, Cory Gardner, all these people are essentially Democrats on the issue of immigration. I expose this in Billionaire at the Barricades. You must read this book to understand the Ingraham angle, this show, and where your country's headed. So if you haven't gotten your copy of Billionaire at the Barricades, just go out and get it because you're going to be more informed than anybody else on this issue. But on this issue of the deal that was brought to the president yesterday, he could not accept this deal the way it was presented. No way. And they knew it. I love how by the way, they walk into the room. The bipartisan open borders cabal walks into the room, and they see Tom Cotton sitting there with Bob Goodlatte. Oops. Who are actually sensible on the issue of immigration, and they want immigration of the pragmatic sort that all you want. And I'm including a lot of the legal immigrants who are listening to this show right now. Maybe you came here, maybe you were a chain migrant, maybe you came here as a family member, but now you see what's happening to your neighborhoods. You see the gangs that are trying to take your kids. You see the importation of heroin. I brought that story to you yesterday and last night on the Ingraham angle exclusively, that the 6 members of this vicious heroin ring in Colorado and Denver, all illegal immigrants, $264,000 worth of heroin, opioids, and other hard drugs trafficked to our children and trafficked to people down on their luck all throughout Colorado. It is a scourge. This should not be there. And I'm going to play for you in just a moment a snippet of last night's show when I was debating an immigration attorney on that very issue. And James, you know what we're going to play, and we'll get that out to you in just a moment. We'll play that for you. But my view on this is the Democrats are not serious about solutions. They aren't interested in giving Trump a win on immigration. You know why? Because that cuts their legs out from under them that he's a racist and doesn't like immigrants. They don't want that deal. They don't care about the Dreamers or the DACA. The DACA is different from the Dreamers, but they don't care about it. If they cared about giving a legal status to these 800,000, they would have walked into that room and they would have heard the president out and they would have said, you know something, we see your point. Let's see if we can get closer. We'll be back next week. They wouldn't have run out and leaked, half-truths about what he said. They would have said, okay, we see where you're coming from. Let us go back to the drawing board. We'll do it. Because we want to give relief to these people, and we think we can have a better system here. Let's work together. They're not serious. You're going to want to tune in to the Ingraham angle tonight. I'm going to explode this narrative of racism. It's all they have. Let's go to Mike in Arkansas on line 1. Trump is accused of saying that some of these countries that we're getting most of our special status immigrants from are from S-hole countries. And why are we getting all these people from S-hole countries? I assume that people don't want to leave their countries unless they are S-hole countries. They generally want to stay in their homelands. Mike, go ahead.
You're absolutely right. There's a big difference between racism and identifying a country run by tin-horn dictators as for what it is. But here's my story, Laura. Before Christmas, I was sitting on a plane next to a gentleman from India. He had been here for 20-plus years. He came here in the 90s. He worked with IBM in their blockchain business. So he's the kind of immigrant we want. Anyways, he was telling me a story about a friend of his who was from Thailand, and he had been away from his country for 20-plus years as well. And he was making a trip back to his homeland, and he was so excited to be going back home and seeing, family, relatives, and all that. So the man gets off the plane, or he no more had to open the door of the plane, as this man told me, and smell the rank scent of rotting fish in the airport. Then he said, "Oh, I wish I was back in the United States." He didn't even get off the plane before he missed our country.
Issues, that's for sure. But I see what you're saying. I mean, there are beautiful parts of India, spectacularly beautiful parts of India. And India is growing, and their economy is picking up and expanding for their own middle class because, of course, they've taken a lot of manufacturing in India. So they had a long way to go because they started, pretty low on the ladder. But I see your point as well. Let's go to Mark in Arizona on line 2. Mark.
Hi, how are you?
Mark, go ahead, my friend.
Hello. Yeah, so I was just calling to comment on the remarks the president
Mark.
said. He's absolutely right. Can you hear me? Hello? Hello?
Just go ahead, Mark. Don't stop. Don't keep stopping. Just go ahead. We have a delay for some reason. Go ahead.
Commenting on the comments the president made, and he's absolutely right. My family migrated from Guatemala on my mom's side and from Italy on my dad's side. And I can tell you right now, after being to both countries, that he's right. They are crap holes, and that's why everybody wants to come here. That's just all I have to say about that.
Well, I was just in Guatemala last year. I'd been there many times in the 1980s, and when I came back, and my daughter, who was born in Guatemala, she's adopted. She was there and she saw it, and it's a tale of two places, really, because there are parts of Guatemala that are breathtaking. I mean, breathtakingly beautiful. Tikal, Lake Tikal, Atitlan, the old city, and yet at the same time, you're driving up this mountain road, and it's open sewage. People just take their trash and they just dump it down the sides of ravines. Most of the places there is no trash pickup, so they just dump their trash down ravines. So beautiful mountain landscapes littered with just people using it as a dump. But there's no services. And so, and then you go into these, orphanages, and children are suffering, and the government is always screwed up and corrupt there, always. And you see the country and you think, wait a second, you could have ecotourism, and you have beautiful seaside, resorts that would be possible here. You have agricultural crops. One of the problems in Guatemala? Sugar subsidies from the U.S. government. We have big sugar The sugar lobby keeps sugar prices artificially low. Coffee prices kept artificially. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on that's complicated, economic issues. But the sugar industry in Guatemala should be one of its driving economic forces. But we give major sugar subsidies as part of the agricultural lobby in the United States, and it kills. And so they have to lower their prices. So anyway, it's a never-ending cycle of poverty. It's horrible. And look, I love Central America because it's like my youth. I spent so much time there. I love it. I have so many friends there. But it's a heartbreaker. It's like Russia for me. I'm drawn to Russia because I spent time there as a young college student, and I studied it from the time I was in 8th grade. And I have 2 Russian sons. Russia has so many endemic problems, not just Putin, beyond Putin, but it's the beautiful parts of Russia. So but there are places that are, S-hole places, in the United States, and that government has destroyed in the United States. Parts of Detroit are still S-hole places, sadly. And Detroit was a gleaming city, one of the most beautiful in the world in the 1920s and 30s. Architecture, artistry, the best music, incredible. And what happened to Detroit? Well, drive through some of the areas that have been abandoned now for 50 years. Go through the old Packard plant where people are shooting up throughout all the broken glass. I've been there. I've walked those halls at the old Packard plant. It's unbelievable. So but America, tends to learn from its lessons. At least it should. Let's go to Paul in Georgia, line 3. Paul.
Yes, Laura. This actually speaks to something that you just talked about, and this is a true story. One of my friends is a pilot with a major Big 3 airline, and when departing a big hub one morning, he had made his initial announcement to the cabin. He inadvertently left his intercom on, and as the plane was making a big circle over one of the outlying areas, he says to the co-pilot, "Man, that's a real shithole down there." And the stewardess immediately came on and said, "Captain, your intercom is still on, but I think you're okay because the entire plane is laughing with you and nodding in the affirmative." So
yeah, you have to say the word as S-hole on radio, by the way. So we had to bleep you there, but I get your point. So the pilot used the word S-hole, and looking down at a particular country he was flying over, and the entire plane started laughing. And that's just the way it is. All right, 855-40 Laura. We'll take a break. Raymond Arroyo is here. Martin Luther King Day is Monday. I didn't realize that.
Yes.
That's Monday. It's
that's why the president has been signing these national monuments in Atlanta and other places, which got almost no reportage.
Well, they don't want him to get any credit for doing things like black unemployment. All these things are tied. Black unemployment is declining, so you have to keep black people upset and angry. And you have to go back to them and say, no, don't worry about your unemployment going down. The president's a racist. Okay, that's what's going on. President Trump is delivering for the American people. All the Democrats can say in response is, you're a racist. 855-40 Laura. More from you, and we have a great show on tap. A lot more coming up. Don't go away.
And I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be.
This special program is designed to bring you the facts first. And the fact of the day is as ugly as it is instructive. When the Oval Office, the president wondered aloud, why are we having all these people from shithole countries come here?
He is a racist. And for all of you who over the last few years have uttered that tired, lazy, uninformed, uneducated, ignorant response of calling me and others who point out racist behavior racists, you know what you can go do? I can't say that, but you can go read a book.
And I see your true colors shining through. I see your true colors, and that's why I love you. So don't be afraid.
Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. Unbelievable that we're hearing this kind of come apart from the media at large. Now, look, I get that everybody was inflamed by these comments. They were provocative. But here's the question. Do they make the president a racist because he said what now we're learning from Dick Durbin and Jake Tapper's reporting that it wasn't Haiti, but rather some nations in Africa that the president was referring to as S-holes. S-hole countries, not the people, the countries. And then because the Norway ambassador had just visited, he said, we need more people from Norway. If we're going to take people in, we should take them from a place like Norway. Does that constitute racism, and does it shake your confidence in him? Were you offended by the comments? Let's go to the phones. Every line lit up. And then I'm going to walk you through what I think is happening here. What's driving this? And there's a political motivation here and a political edge that you should not ignore. David, in Michigan, you wanted to say what?
Yes, I am a proud supporter of the Trump administration, of President Trump. I was actually born in Detroit, but I grew up in Cartagena, Colombia. I came back up to the States when I was 10 years old. When the president talks about a bill of love, I think what he was really saying was it's a bill of love for the American people to secure the border, to end chain migration and the visa lottery program, and to build that Great Wall. So that's what I want to see happening. I don't care about listening to the liberal pundit saying that he's a racist. He's not a racist. I'm in the upper peninsula of Michigan. I can go down to the local restaurant grill, and I hear the same thing people are saying. They agree. It is, frankly, a shithole country or a shithole place that.
Okay. We're going to leave it there. Great comment. 855-40-LAURA, 855-40-LAURA. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. I'm going to tell you what's behind this in a moment. Stay.
For hardworking Americans like us, it doesn't seem like there's ever enough time in the day. Freshly is the easiest and most convenient way to eat healthy, no matter what life throws your way. Freshly's team of chefs create all-natural, gluten-free dinners and deliver them fresh to your door. So even if you get stuck at work late, you can still come home to a delicious dinner cooked by a chef. No more worrying about having to figure out what's for dinner, and especially no mess to clean up after. Freshly chefs source the finest all-natural ingredients they can find, and then they work with nutritionists to ensure that their meals are as healthy as possible. All of the meals are made to order and pre-portioned. Their menu is created by chefs for people who want to eat healthy but are living busy lives and don't always have the time to do shopping, cooking, and cleaning. Check out this week's menu created by Freshly's chefs and get $25 off your first order of 6 chef-cooked dinners, plus free shipping by going to freshly.com/Laura. You'll feel so relieved to come home to a chef-cooked meal every night with Freshly. That's freshly.com/Laura for $25 off your first order. Order today to see what life's like when you no longer have to think about dinner.
It's not about race, as you like to make it, because that's easy and lazy. It's about economics. My comment back to Maria is your children are going to have a much better economic future and a better chance for a good job than they would have had under another president. Now, let me, you called on me, so let me finish. Truer words.
You know what, John Frederick? You know what, John Frederick? John, until that last comment, I'm going to cut you off. Can we please cut him off? Can we take him off the screen?
You are the best thing.
Yeah, it sounds like the producers told Don Lemon to pull the mic there. That was John Fredericks, who was apparently making an economic point that I guess that the president has increased the economy and helped spur job growth in the black community, and that in the long range is going to be so good for African Americans. And Don Lemon cut him off. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. We are delighted to be joined by Jessica Vaughn. Jessica is the Director of Policy Studies at the Center for Immigration Studies. We're going to get into this bipartisan deal. You know, Jessica, all day, and welcome to the program, all day, and every line on the board is lit up now. People want to talk about the president's comments attributed to him that he says he didn't say in that particular language. Now, Dick Durbin and another GOP senator that was present claims he did call these countries in Africa S-hole countries. But let's back up for a minute. I would argue the reason that this was released, and it had to be released by those who were upset by that encounter with the president, was that the DACA bipartisan deal they presented was not what they agreed to. Tell us what was in this bipartisan deal and why the president had to turn it down.
Well, I think you're right. This is like people, a rear guard action when people who just lost a battle decide to blow up the bridge as they run away. This so-called deal that they had, which was put together by 6 pro-amnesty senators who, bipartisan really doesn't mean much in the immigration policy world because there are differences even, within the Republican Party on this. So what they wanted to do in this proposal was provide an amnesty for dreamers, which is a bigger group of people than the DACA beneficiaries, an instant legalization for the parents of the dreamers, and in exchange for changes to chain migration that make no difference whatsoever in the numbers, and a hidden amnesty for the people who have TPS. And the standards for giving out this amnesty are less than current standards for green cards. They would excuse some criminal convictions and make it easy for people to get the amnesty. But they just really kind of play a shell game with illegal immigration numbers, meaning that there would be no real cuts to chain migration. And even more significantly, it includes only authorization for the down payment on the wall, completely ignoring the other very urgent needs for interior enforcement.
Right.
For example, like E-Verify, to stem the illegal immigration that is guaranteed whenever we have an amnesty, would do nothing to fix the problems that led to these calls for amnesty. It would make the problem much worse.
Well, this was the thing I came across, and in our reporting, we uncovered they put, I think it was a $6 billion figure that was offered for border enforcement. $1.3 billion would go to the wall. That's it. Which it's a $30 billion wall. The $20 billion, by most estimates, but some say it's as high as 30. $1 billion's going to give you nothing. What is that for? The chain that you put in the concrete on the floor? I mean, it won't work. So there was no commitment
it's for
to
them
really
to be able to say they did something for the wall.
Right.
That's what it's for.
Right. So the further question is, where do we go from here? Is a bipartisan, and I put that term in quotes, is a bipartisan solution possible? Or should the White House take the lead on this and say, here's what I'm willing to sign, here's what we're going to do, and try to build his own coalition using the Goodlatte bill, which fulfills all of his requirements and fully funds the wall?
Well, I think the president has already made it quite clear what needs to be done. He sent this to-do list to Congress in October that was compiled by the career professionals at the immigration agencies. So it's all out there, and a lot of that is represented in the bill that was filed on Wednesday by a group of 4 House Republicans who are experts on border and immigration issues that would accomplish a lot of the president's agenda. And I think what's going to happen is that people are going to realize that it's impossible to negotiate with people like Senator Durbin, who only want an amnesty and nothing more. They're going to have to look at those Senate Democrats who represent states that voted for Trump, that are concerned about our immigration system, and that will be approving of a real deal for the DACA people that also addresses the problems, like addresses the side effects of this amnesty, like more chain migration, something that gets rid of the senseless visa lottery, and also brings more enforcement so that we don't have more illegal immigrants who are going to be demanding an amnesty, or at least their advocates will be demanding an amnesty on their behalf 10 years from now. They're going to have to find the people who really want to make a deal, not the ones who just want to bash the president and have this issue festering for their own political gain.
And Jessica, I have every line lit up. I have to go to the callers in a second, but before I do that, before I let you go, the problem is, you and I know the political reality. The president needs this DACA leverage, and without it, it is unlikely that he's going to get any concessions out of the Democrats. Certainly not funding for his wall, but probably not an end to chain migration or anything else. So doesn't he have to act between now and March when the DACA, provision sunsets?
I don't think
the
president has to act. I think the Democrats have to act between now and March 5th, because, in a couple of weeks, people who have DACA are going to start to sweat because their work permits are going to be expiring in a few weeks. And the Democrats need to decide, are they willing to throw those people under the bus just to save chain migration and the visa lottery and prevent Trump from a win on the wall? That's going to be their choice ultimately.
Accurately, I think, sums it up. That's where we are. And Trump has shown with the 200,000 Salvadorans, he said, you were here temporarily, you need to go now. You have 19 months to do it. He means business. He means to fulfill the promises he made to the people during the campaign. And the Democrats do have the clock ticking. Jessica Vaughn of the Center for Immigration Policy Immigration Studies, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I want to now go to the phones. Brian, my pleasure. Brian, well, you know what? I'm going to take a break. Let me take a very quick break, and then I'm going to get to all your phone calls. I know you want to talk about this. Did the president's comments offend you? And now that you learn they were about African countries as opposed to Haitian and African countries, does that change the math at all? Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham, 855-40-LAURA. We'll take your calls on the other side of this break.
She said, I'll give in penetration heart. That'll hurt a lot worse than the one that he left in me.
Let me tell you, you know why he doesn't like the visa lottery? Because it's the way Africans come here. You know why he doesn't like TPS, temporary protective status? Because right now it covers Haitians, it covers Salvadorians. You know what Haitians and Africans have in common? They are black. We cannot normalize the fact that Donald Trump has turned the Oval Office into a shithole.
Lovely. Lovely. That's the commentary over at CNN. CNN was a basket case last night. Anderson Cooper was crying. I'll play that for you in a little bit. Chris Cuomo literally opened an easel and wrote, "He is a s-hole." I mean, you know, when Joe Biden, after the health care deal, grabbed the President of the United States and on mic, unbeknownst to him, I guess, said, "This is a big blanking deal," we didn't then see on every network people writing, "Joe Biden is a effing big deal." We didn't see this kind of thing, or lower thirds, graphics on news shows that said, "Vice President says health care is big blanking deal," and have the whole word written out. Last night on CNN, families couldn't even watch. And I would argue, though it was coarse, I think the comment was unwarranted. It was issued between men in a private meeting and then released for political reasons. So you have to take all of this with a grain of salt. I want to go to you. Were you offended by it? Did you think it constitutes racism or in any way indicates that the president is racist? We'll go to your calls. Line 1. Go ahead.
Yeah, this is my comment. You know, I think we've pretty much summed this up very quickly. Why do they come to America if America is, and their country and America is so great? I'm a little confused here. Why would I leave wherever I'm from to come to America if their country is as great as everybody says it is? I have a big problem with that.
Yep. Well, I was getting tweets earlier today, and I thank you for the call. There was a tweet that somebody sent me earlier today, and it said it was this is a man from Nicaragua. He said it was an indecorous choice of words, but true ones. "I can assure you my family and I didn't escape to the U.S. as Reagan refugees fleeing persecution from the Central American version of the Magic Kingdom. We escaped a failed communist s-hole." So there are people who've come here who do have that takeaway. It is in no way indicative of, nor should it characterize, the people there. The people didn't ask to be where they are. They didn't ask to be brutalized by the tyrants running these regimes. They find themselves in a difficult situation, and that's why they're here. Brian, Wisconsin, you want to say what?
Well, number one, no, I don't think it was a racist comment. And the more the left wing is spewing off about this and how it was, I think our president is just laughing. He needs to keep that going because that'll make sure he gets in the second term. And number two, I think if he really, really wants to take care of this whole wall funding issue, the doc all rolled into one, he needs to put the dollar where the dot is. He needs to make sure that he states how much we're spending on illegal immigration and border patrol. Once we build that wall, all that savings, what was it, $50 million or something like that? If $20 million comes off of that to build the wall, The rest, go back to the taxpayers. Tell the taxpayer how much money more they're going to get back, and then Nancy Pelosi can't complain about us just getting crumbs anymore, and it'll be a nightmare. Their heads will just explode. Thanks a lot.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Great commentary. And remember, the president has since tweeted out that he did not use that language. That's what he said. Now, that's qualifying it, but that's his most recent tweet. For those of you not familiar with it, I'll pull it up just so you can see it. The president said, first of all, he said the DACA deal, they brought him what he calls a fake DACA deal. He said it'll never work. Never said anything derogatory about Haitians other than Haiti is obviously a very poor and troubled country. Never said take them out. Made up by Democrats. I have a wonderful relationship with Haitians. Probably should record future meetings. Unfortunately, no trust. And then earlier, this morning, he said, the language used by me at the DACA meeting was tough, but this was not the language used. What was really tough was the outlandish proposal made, a big setback for DACA. Is that enough in your mind to diffuse this controversy? Meanwhile, while we're talking about this, the Dow Jones, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ all reach all-time highs, exceeding 25,000. The Dow is. This is happening in real time. Okay? So I think one is to separate words said in a private meeting between men who are passionately engaged in an issue, and I would love to have been a fly on the wall, or better yet, a microphone on the wall, when LBJ and JFK and Nixon and others were in that room. We have it on. I've heard the Nixon tapes. You can hear the F-bombs and everything dropping on that tape. If you don't think the president, and I would say Bill Clinton and Obama as well, if you don't think they've used worse than that, Dick Durbin, play the Dick Durbin, that he can't believe any president would ever say these things.
When it came to the issue of, quote, chain migration, I said to the president, do you realize how painful that term is to so many people? African Americans believe that they migrated to America in chains. And when you speak about chain migration, it hurts them personally. And he said, oh, that's a good line.
Well, that's not the right bite, but we'll get you the right bite. That's another bite. But you see the narrative being painted here. That because Trump used the word chain migration and he referred to these African nations as S-holes, he must be a racist. That has to be the outcome. I want to hear from black listeners. Your thoughts on this. Your reaction to this. 855-40-LAURA, 855-40-LAURA. We will get to all of your calls. Raymond Arroyo sitting in for Laura Ingraham. Keep it right there. Much more ahead.
Thanks for listening to the Laura Ingraham Show podcast. Download new episodes every week at podcastone.com. That's podcastone.com.
Podcast One has new shows on our new app. Check out all the cool features to help you explore our exciting new programming, like America's Lakers podcast with Jay Moore, So Random with Corinne Olympios, Attack Each Day, The Harbaugh's podcast, Not Just Sports with Susie Schuster and Rich Eisen, and Sessions with Randy Jackson, as well as your old favorites like The Lady Gang, Steve Austin, Shaquille O'Neal, and Adam Carolla. Get the new Podcast One app in the App Store, Google Play, or podcastone.com.